and welcome to episode 6 of our webinar series. The topic for today's discussion is titled Status of Stainless Steel Sector Post-Lockdown and the Way Forward. We have managed to bring to you a highly informative and enormously popular stainless steel panel possible in India for this particularly focused on-demand webinar. As we are all aware that the global steel industry has been going through a tumultuous phase for the last 2 months with the outbreak of the pandemic, and captains of the industry have flocked to tougher times ahead. Plant shutdowns, drastic downsizing in operations, clogged supply chains, and evaporating demand are some of the most pressing concerns, not to mention the prolonged uncertainty regarding resumption of production as usual. With the automotive and construction industries being thrown off gear and consequent drying up of downstream demand, the stainless steel industry is firmly in a bearish grip as manpower scarcity and logistical bottlenecks compel manufacturers to go slow when it comes to reopening or scaling up of operations at production units. China, being the largest producer and consumer of stainless steel, contributing well over half of total global production, has been paralyzed, much like other major economies. However, could India use this to its advantage as the nation limps back to manufacturing normalcy after the lockdown? Today, Steelment Events has brought together 3 leading experts on one virtual platform to deliberate on the problems afflicting the industry and to shine a light on the way forward. So without further ado, let me first introduce our esteemed panel to you. Our first guest on the panel is Mr. N.C. Mathur. Mr. Mathur has achieved celebrity status in the stainless steel industry. I'm not going into the earlier parts of his career due to paucity of time. He joined Jindal Stainless in 1983. His 36 years of association with Jindal Stainless has been mainly devoted to stainless steel development and growth. He's also served on the board for 10 years. With the total experience of 47 years in the stainless steel industry, he was also elected as the president of Indian Stainless Steel Development Association for 20 straight years and has been the chairman also of Steel Furnace Association of India. He has been recognized with Udyog Ratna Award from All India Stainless Steel Association and a Special Achievement Award as well from the same organization. Currently, he's working as an independent director with Jindal Stainless, Hisar Limited. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Now, friends, very good afternoon to all of you. It's a very important time in the history that for the first time we are seeing such a situation that we are not physically meeting in a conference, but at the same time, this is a great way to communicate where more people can be together. Now, let me just tell you 2019, what was happening, what has happened in 2020, we know. Now, let's look at 2019. The global production was some 52 million ton. China with 29 million ton had a huge share of 56%. We all know the China story, but let me bring some interesting facts before you. That global average of stainless steel within the steel sector is around 2.8%. In China, in spite of huge production of stainless steel, they also produce so much of other steel, so their share is 3.3% of the total steel. And in India, you'll be surprised that we are close to 4%. So we have not done badly in the stainless steel within the steel sector is concerned. There's no doubt when you come to per capita and other thing, we'll talk about that much later. And India has been also innovator in developing some special grades, and challenges were thrown to us with high nickel prices in 1989-90. And that has been accepted and become an important part of the stainless steel production and use. So with this introduction, and I'm always hopeful because one of the best things for India is our demography. 65% people in India are below the age of 35. That's a very positive sign. And our Prime Minister did mention that 21st century belongs to India, and I'm sure we all can work together to make that happen. Thank you very much for inviting me on this panel, and I'll be ready to give more detailed answer questions later on as we go along.
Thank you, sir. Our next guest on the panel is Mr. K.K. Pahuja. He is the president of Indian Stainless Steel Development Association of India. He has worked at Steel Authority of India Limited as the executive director, where he has been part of key strategic groups to drive growth plans for the company through product development and operating efficiencies. He has over 40 years of experience in the steel industry in the areas of operations and supply chain, and also policy making at the government level. As president of Indian Stainless Steel Development Association, he is currently engaged in the promotion and development of stainless steel and nickel applications in the country. Welcome, sir.
Good afternoon, friends. We know that the COVID-19 related lockdown has been all of a sudden and without any precedence. Sometimes the comparison is made with 2008 meltdown, but I think that is also not appropriate. So there is no rule book to follow, and we are reacting to the situation as it unfolds. We also find that government is also acting with caution in trying to balance the requirement of the public health with the economic compulsions. Now, as it turns out, enforcing lockdown looks much easier than lifting lockdown. So how does the industry cope up with the multiple challenges that we are facing today, including the workforce safety and health, reviving the supply chains, reviving the markets, and at the same time, contribute to the national effort of combating this crisis? Because there are still many unknowns how the virus will manifest itself, when will we have a cure or a vaccine, whether the recovery will be V-shaped or L-shaped or linear or whatever, we are still not very clear. But I'll share the optimism of Mr. Mathur and stick my neck out to say that we have some positives, and the most precious is our domestic consumption, including the demographic part which Mr. Mathur mentioned. So even with maybe fall with the income levels, I feel that the basic items of consumption, both consumer durables and non-durables, may see a recovery after the lockdown is lifted, and some of our stainless steel products fall in that category. But we also need to protect our markets and see that our own industry is benefited by this market, and it is not captured by cheaper imports. Here I will again like to recall the message of the Prime Minister to be self-reliant and boost the domestic manufacture and be competitive. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Our final guest on the panel is Mr. Vijay Sharma. Mr. Sharma is a veteran in the area of sales and marketing with over 35 years of experience. Mr. Sharma has steered diverse and connected roles in areas of sales, distribution, corporate branding, strategy formulation, market research, product development, customer outreach and satisfaction in both industrial and consumer domain. Currently, he serves as director of Jindal Stainless Group and is responsible for driving marketing, business development, and corporate affairs for the organization. Welcome, sir. And could we have some opening comments from you?
Yeah, good afternoon and namaskar. It is not very easy to set the context and the perspective right when you have to speak after the stalwarts like Mr. Mathur and Mr. Pahuja. I have been lucky to be a participant in many of the webinars and also the panel, and also talking to many of you individually, and webinars of the global level also. So I thought that it is better to set the context with respect to the stainless steel business in India, and how do we relate with the global situation which is happening around us, more so in the COVID context. So I would like to take a couple of minutes on setting the context. COVID has changed the preferences, mindset, priorities mindset, whether it is private domain or it is a government domain. This is important to understand because post-COVID, and I would like to define post-COVID in my way, post-COVID, these changes in the preferences and the priorities are going to of the consumers. We have learned how to, we have to learn how to live with the COVID, rather try to find out the ways around it. India, whether it is in stage 2, is trying to wriggle out of stage 3 and straight away reach to stage 4, whereas the competition around us, especially in the eastern part of India, it is perhaps already at stage 4. That means their factories are manufacturing, and we have yet to start primarily. we have been talking about what is going to happen post-COVID. To me, post-COVID is two types of categories. One is post-lockdown exit, which is now what we are trying to do. Second is post finding the vaccine or the whether we can find is it curable or not. So lockdown, we are struggling. We have all practically businessmen. We are struggling 30 days, 60 days, how many more days it will go. We are also struggling to find out what is the impact of this COVID on our industry. We have got many new realizations, which is going to impact the growth drivers of stainless steel post-COVID. These realizations are, what are the bad costs? Travel, luxury offices. What are the good costs? Webinars, work from anywhere, IR 4.0. Cost of living versus cost of luxury. Will we go for high-end cars or we need necessities in the life? Core versus non-value-added activities, and of course, consolidation and respect for each other. Everybody was here at 12:30 sharp. It's very heartening. We have started respecting each other more. I was talking to my friends specifically in MSME. MSE is very, very critical, more than 40% in stainless steel supply chain, and also the downstream industry also. Compliances, regulations, social distancing, safety, and also the fear. Level of economic activity, which pocket will start when. Orders of centers, interpretations of the state and implementation by the local administrations. These are the confusions. We have not yet started, though on books we started in first week of May, perhaps. Government relief clarity, opening, gradual opening, intermittent slowly, intermittent closing and ramp up. Zones, interstate, forecasting, ecosystem. So these are the challenges which we are facing. But I feel while we will be trying to respond to the questions, I feel that whether it is post-corona pre-vaccine or post-corona post-vaccine, for stainless steel, there are still going to be opportunities. Government is recognizing it. That is the reason lots of focus is on the economy and specifically infrastructure. India had an inherent disadvantage of being less competitive because of the cost of capital and also because of the logistics cost as a component of the GDP. But since India has recognized that, that means India as a country is going to be more competitive. In medical space, there are going to be big opportunities, specifically for India. Stainless steel has got inherent advantages, of course, corrosion, of course, aesthetics, and also hygiene. And the LCC, which is being recognized by the government at a very, very high level, 7,500 kilometers of coastal area, about 28,000 kilometers of the river length, less than 1% of inland waterways. That's a big opportunity. So I feel that India is all poised, matter of couple of months, to come back to the normal level of growth rate. Growth drivers are likely to be different, but whatever are going to be the growth rates, what are going to be the growth drivers, stainless steel has got a big space in that. So I'm very optimistic and things are going to be better. And we wait for your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So those were very positive opening statements. At this point, I'd like to request the audience to participate freely and send us your questions. Don't forget to mention your name and your company's name. We will try to have your questions answered from our panelists. All right, let's proceed with the questions then. My first question is to Mr. Sharma, but to all my questions, any of the panelists can add on to what your fellow panelists say or could counter. So my first question goes to Mr. Sharma. So growth in Indian stainless steel production last year fell to 5% compared to 8 to 9% in the previous years. What are the reasons for this? Also, what is the growth forecast in FY21?
Okay. I would like to start with what is happening in the world as against this percentage. People might be aware that globally the growth was 3%. If I try to compare the various regions except India and China, everywhere else it was minus. In fact, EU and US, it was minus 8% individually. India is about 5% growth. China was 10%. So globally it was 3%. So that means a few things were happening worldwide, which were happening less in China and happening less in India. Coming to India, we should have grown at 8 to 9% for sure at least. But just last 10 days, 7 to 10 days of the year, and looking into the typical skewness of any industry in the country and also in the world, it had an impact of about 2 to 3% in the growth of the stainless steel, and the similar impact was seen in other segments also. In addition, last year, especially in pre-festival season, September, October, some of the consumer-facing segments, specifically the auto, in fact, last year auto degrew by 20% over 18-19, and also to some extent utensils and that pata sector, they had a negative growth, because of which instead of growing by 8 to 10%, Indian market grew by about 5%. So this was till 1920.
Yes, Mr. Pahuja, you want to add something?
I think I'll give some other perspective in addition to what Mr. Sharma has said. I don't know, our calculation, we make a difference between the production growth and the consumption growth. And our calculation shows, of course, we are now still compiling and fine-tuning the data, but the consumption grew at 9 to 10%, and the production, which was growing at 8 and 9%, deaccelerated to 5%. And here is the story. The story is that the imports went up almost 1.5 times from a level of especially flat products, from about 5 lakh ton to almost 8 lakh tons, so 50-60% growth. And while the consumption grew, the production could not grow in the same ratio because of the higher level of imports. So this is my analysis. Of course, we are still fine-tuning the data to come to more definite numbers. Thank you.
Right. Mr. Mathur, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, I think the growth of any market has a relation with the GDP. So we know what was our GDP growth for the last financial year, which was not as healthy as in the previous year. So that has one of the impact. And of course, as Mr. Pahuja mentioned, the demand and the consumption did not go down. It is the total of domestic production plus imports is what is to be seen as the actual demand in the country. And other thing is, at this time, I want to also salute all our housewives, because still more than 60% or in that range, stainless steel is used in our homes. Right from in the kitchen, if you look at from storage to cooking to serving to our utensils, and the MSME sector which we are talking is the backbone to supply in that segment. So I think, as I mentioned earlier also, we have a young population, there will be migration from urban to rural to urban area, there will be more demand coming. So let's not, and I also said that India's percentage of stainless steel production out of the total steel is more than China. Why don't we recognize that fact also, which is never brought out more visibly. As I said, we are producing percentage of stainless steel within the steel industry is more. I also want to mention that stainless steel is a value-added engineering material. Although it may be 3% of the total steel produced in the world, but it contributes to 12% of the revenue. So it has its own position. And we are very hopeful that at this low level of 2.5 kg per person is just the beginning of a big story coming in coming years.
Right, sir. Mr. Pahuja, to what you were saying, it's in the same vein. My next question to you: what was the capacity utilization level of the domestic stainless steel industry prior to the lockdown, and what measures could be taken to augment capacity utilization?
The capacity utilization that we were going on was about 60-65%. It's not very high, and in spite of having a buoyant market, the capacity utilization is low, because what is coming in the way is the large quantity of imports said in the earlier question. And these imports had a, I would say, a dampening effect on the domestic capacity utilization, because it's coming from countries who have some unfair advantages and also duty-free access to India through FTAs. So if the situation can be corrected by providing a level playing field to our industry, I think the capacity utilization can easily go up. And here we are very much encouraged by the recent Prime Minister's message of being vocal about local. So we hope that domestic manufacturing will get some kind of a boost and also a level playing field against predatory imports, so that the capacity utilization can go up.
Just to add what Mr. Pahuja said, there are multiple ways through which the capacity utilization can be increased for Indian capacities. You see, one, of course, Mr. Pahuja said level playing field. This level playing field is not only limited to the extent of coils and sheets. It should also be extended to downstream finished goods. For example, welded pipe and tubes. For example, utensils. For example, auto components. To give you just a small example, the bilateral trade between China and India, the total trade is close to $93 billion, but the trade deficit against India is $53 billion. So that is an opportunity available. Of course, this is more towards the finished goods also, because India has been exporting the primary products, whereas China has been exporting the value-added products for us. So it means that tubes, utensils, auto components, and things like that should be curbed. Also, to increase the capacity utilization, specifically in the MSME, government should release the whatever plans they have got in mind related with the infrastructure, and specifically related with the logistics infrastructure, so that the industry gets geared up to start serving the government. And the way we are seeing, government is, all the governments in the world and all the people in the world, they are feeling cheated, sort of. So the manufacturing getting out of China. Perhaps it is a time for manufacturers like White Goods, and we have to invite those manufacturers in India. So there has to be some detailing on that. And yes, export support, wherever, whether it is finished goods or the WIP like coils and sheets. So I think these 4 or 5 areas, if with the help of the government, we are able to work upon this capacity utilization from anywhere from 60s, it can go up in totality.
Sure. Moving on, what is the cumulative contribution of MSMEs, MSME manufacturers to India's annual production of stainless steel? What steps could be taken to keep stainless steel MSMEs afloat amid demand setbacks? Any of the panelists?
I think MSME sector is very important for stainless steel industry. And as Mr. Sharma said, it's about 40%. And with the new definition of MSME being announced by the government, I think this share may go to even half of the industry coming in the MSME sector. And if we include the downstream industries, the induction furnaces, patta, patti, everything, the MSME is a very, very vital sector of stainless steel industry. And this sectors required immediate support. Government has announced some measures to, inject liquidity into this sector, but I think a little more is to be done. What we have been, representing to the government is to directly support this MSME sector in terms of the idle fixed cost incurred during the lockdown period. I think that's the common demand that we have been told from the MSME sector of our industry. And other things like, income tax holiday on export turnover or reduction in GST somewhere where it is high. So some of these measures are required to handhold the MSME sector and play its due role in the industry and in the economy.
Right. To Mr. Sharma then, stainless steel imports surged 50% last year. Is this solely due to unregulated dumping by Asian exporters?
Okay. Before coming to what is coming into India, what is happening in the world, we need to understand that. Globally, such trade flows have been a regular part of the business. These were primarily because of perhaps the non-availability of like products, perhaps due to certain typical competitive situation in a particular country, and also perhaps due to some preferences or discrimination by some of the countries. Post 2018, March 2018, world that time also was VUCA. There were about 10 trade remedial initiatives going on one country on the another. Section 232, followed by safeguard by Europe, and followed by even Big Daddy China getting threatened by Indonesia, ADD of China on Indonesia. It all happened in a period of 3 to 4 months. And the VUCA became Super VUCA. In fact, since March 2018 till today, there are 26 trade remedial initiatives either implemented or ongoing in case of stainless steel in the world. And within these 26, 60% are post 2018. And very interestingly, within these 26, 70% China appears, and very interestingly, about around 50% the newcomer, 3 years young Indonesia appears. It's happening worldwide. Perhaps there is a global relation that is globalization or nationalization. And you have seen that how the world reacts to this non-level playing field and vulnerability of India. What is the reason? I think it is an irresponsible investment in the capacities. When in a country, the capacity is 27 times more than the local consumption, what they're going to do. Participants may be having a question on the competitiveness. I will like to spend 30 seconds. India, we have got two challenges. I will not name many. Cost of capital, we are at least double than the China. I'm not comparing with Japan and Europeans. Cost of logistics. Logistics is about 14 to 15% of our GDP cost, and we have to compete with those countries where it is in single digit. So just both these two elements put together make the Indian competitiveness down by 10 to 12%. And I have heard a minister saying that the uncompetitiveness of India lies outside the gates of the factories. So in such a situation, such dumping is going to happen. And it happens in India also. And China has been known to providing the facilities to the manufacturers which are non-WTO compliant, and the facts are supporting that, whether it is the subsidies, whether it is the incentives. While the world was struggling between stage 2 and stage 3, China increased the export subsidy from 10% to 13%. So that is how they work. And now Chinese finance going into other countries are doing the same things. Yes, there was a lot of imports into India to the extent that it was imported to the level that it increased the inventory and it disturbed the prices. It did not get consumed. I am very hopeful now that India government is recognizing that level playing field. And I'm not talking about only stainless steel. That is true for many products in the country. When we talk about China, whether it is the chemicals, whether it is tires, whether it is Ganeshi, whether it is our toys, whether it is our crackers, you name the products, everything is coming from China. So we are very hopeful, vocal for local, opportunity to domestic players, MSME and corporates, they are all part of the integral part of the ecosystem. Together, they have got the capacities, we have got the capabilities, we can stop it. So that is the situation for imports.
Right, sir. A little more on that, giving you more chances to be vocal on local. Indian stainless steel imports predominantly flat products. Which specific grades and products constitute import requirements, and can we do away with imports?
Okay, you see, I will give you two statistics about the Indian industry, which we worked upon along with ISDA. In the last 20 years, about 80 new grades were developed by domestic industry. 80 new grades. It encompasses all the segments and all the series. And today, about 140 regular grades are being supplied by domestic industry for various applications. And these 80 grades, they include grades like duplex, super austenitic, and things like that. These are being supplied to segments like atomic energy, process industry, automobile, all these. This has happened because of some positive handholding with some of the customers, domestic customers, as well as global customers. Just to give us another example, the grades which are higher than 316L, I'm saying higher than 316L, the quantity may not be very high. In India, about 3 years back, import was about 70%, domestic production was about 30%. Now it is 80% is domestic production. The point here is to say that whatever is coming into India, practically everything in stainless steel flat products is manufacturable in terms of the processes, in terms of the capacities, in terms of the capabilities in India. There is no need. But yes, when we talk about the competitiveness of Indian products, not only stainless, you name the product, nobody in the world can be competitive against countries like China and now Indonesia. So India is absolutely capable of producing all the requirements of stainless steel in India. And also India is exporting to Europe, and that too in Europe, the high-end quality markets like Germany. So that means from the quality perspective, the products are well established globally. So there is no need of any such product to be imported into India.
Mr. Mathur, would you like to come in?
I just want to add that stainless steel is not just bright and shining. That's a very simple definition. How many of us, even educated people, realize other properties of stainless steel? Impact resistance. I mean, nobody realized that impact resistance. What about high temperature application? When Delhi Metro was being made, which is a big success story we all know, Mr. Sridharan, who is the metro man, he had a choice of material. He could use aluminum, he could use cotton steel, but why did he choose stainless steel? Because first of all, life cycle cost. Secondly, almost zero maintenance. Third, in case of any accident, you won't lose lives. We have seen a big accident in Australia 30, 40 years ago when there was a head-on collision of a passenger train with an engine, and not a single life was lost because those coaches were made of stainless steel, and what got damaged was the initial 2-3 meters where you enter and you have the restrooms. The same coach was rebuilt, restored, and reused. So these are things which going forward, it's not only kitchen and what standard applications, and also going forward, the healthcare sector will be very important. How many of us realize that we bet our life in the hand of a surgeon in a hospital, or when we go to a dentist, that all the tools they use are stainless steel because it can be sterilized. So these are things which we have to, and the most important also is the field of education. Our IITs, our design institutes do not teach much about stainless steel. So the young children who graduate or postgraduate do not have the basic knowledge of stainless steel. So that is one area where government and the industry should partner and make sure that the basic education of stainless steel is provided for this sector. I think the future is bright. At 2.5 kg, we can't sleep and feel happy. There is, I have no doubt that in coming years, after this lockdown is a temporary thing. It's not going to last forever. So we should, in the process of this time which we have, do some thinking. And you also talked initially about the coastal area. What about the development of coastal area? What better material can be used for construction? Look at the cyclone which came to Odisha 2-3 years back. The city of Bhubaneswar had just recently at that time built stainless steel bus shelter. In spite of those strong winds, it was documented that nothing happened to those bus shelters. So these are some clear-cut messages with example which our country will have to look forward to. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to take a couple of questions on China and the market there before we again come back to India. Downstream demand for stainless steel is recovering fast in China post the lockdown, as you know, and prices have inched up on the Shanghai Futures Exchange. What is the outlook on Chinese production in FY21? Could it exceed the 29.4 million ton recorded in financial year 2020? Mr. Sharma, if you could take that.
Lesser spoken, the better in case of China. But if China is recovering, I think, personally speaking, all of us should be very happy. To me, if whatever is being produced in China, if it gets consumed in China, the challenges for the world would be less. Rather, I will appeal to the stainless steel development associations to work more on China. And if China can recover, I am pretty sure post this ramp up, which to me will take maybe 1 or 2 more months time. Of course, yes, we have to be very, very careful, very, very cautious. The similar thing should be visible in other parts of the world, including China, including India. That is my view on this.
Right. China is also incentivizing stainless steel exports through export rebates, like you all mentioned. Is this a real threat to Indian manufacturers? Has the Indian Stainless Steel Development Association urged the government to adopt certain trade sanctions like those that are effective in Europe and elsewhere? Mr. Pahuja, if you could take that.
Yeah, you're right. China has increased the export incentive, I think, from 10% to 13%, and that is a looming threat. But that is not the whole threat, because recent data that we had access to shows that, as you rightly said, or Mr. Sharma said, that China is consuming also more, and the exports from China have slightly come down. But it has been replaced by the exports by the same Chinese companies. Some of the Chinese exports are getting replaced by Indonesian exports from the very same Chinese company. So some of we find that in some of the markets, trade measures have been imposed. For example, in the European Union, against Indonesian capacity and Indonesian export. So while China is a producer, China is a big consumer, but Indonesia, emerging as a big producer, is not a consumer at all. They have very low consumption of their own. So most of this production will be export oriented. And since these companies are same which are operating in China, they will try to shift the export from Indonesia instead of China.
And I also feel that governments are realizing no country can rely to increase the GDP or, generally speaking, growth on trading activity, that to import based. So the last messaging by Honorable Prime Minister was very clear that economy boosting, of course, it will have the level playing field and everything. So such threats, which are very difficult, can only be sustained with the right support of the government as well. Otherwise, which company or in the world can have the possibility to absorb 10 to 12% support being given by the competing country in a practically commodity product line? Nobody can. So government should do something.
Mr. Pahuja, my next question is to you. We know that India imports every year. Will the government consider bringing down, abolishing the import duty on these raw materials?
Well, I can't answer for the government, but we have been representing for many years now. And the basic logic behind this is that the raw material, especially those raw materials which are not manufactured in the country at all, should be importable at zero basic custom duty. Right now, for ferronickel and also nickel and stainless steel scrap, these three items have to be necessarily imported, and they attract a duty. Ferronickel and stainless steel attract a duty. So we have been representing, and hopefully government will consider now. We are hoping for a lot of economic reforms. And I hope that one of the reforms could be that to make the raw materials available at the lowest possible price, not just for stainless steel, for all industries, and improve the competitiveness of the industry.
Right. Also, another question to you, sir. What is the current level of graphite electrode consumption by the Indian stainless steel industry? And also, if you could tell me, what is the quantity of graphite electrode required to produce 1 ton of stainless steel?
The graphite electrode consumption is about 2 to 3 kg per ton of metal produced, but stainless steel is not the only industry consuming graphite electrodes. It is consumed by all electric arc furnaces, be they are in the stainless steel or in the alloy steel or even carbon steel. So it's a much bigger, those industries are much bigger than stainless steel in volume terms and consume more. This is the position.
Do we see more of Chinese imports coming in for stainless for graphite electrodes?
We have manufacturing capacity in the country. It's a duopoly, and sometimes the supplies and prices do get affected by international events, and that fluctuation in prices is of course something which the industry never likes. We require some predictability and stability of input materials. Here also I would go by the same logic that just as we want the raw materials to be available at a reasonable price, other inputs like graphite electrodes or be refractories, etc., should also be available at reasonable price so that we are able to compete against the imported materials.
Just to add what Mr. Pahuja said, I understand that the capacity today in India for producing graphite electrode is of the tune of about 160,000 tons, whereas EAF-based consumption, all inclusive, including SS and others, it is close to about 60 to 65,000 tons. So that means there is an adequate capacity available. Despite of that, while looking at the spot global opportunities, the price fluctuation to that extent, that is not right from the Indian manufacturer per se, when we have difficulty in having the competitiveness. So that was from a manufacturer's take.
Sure. And Mr. Sharma, how strong is the impact of the exchange rate on the entire procurement basket? Is it more beneficial now to make stainless steel using mild steel scrap and add ferroalloys rather than smelting stainless steel scrap?
Rohan, it is a matter of pride to hear that India is perhaps the only country in the world which has got a very, very balanced state in producing most of the grades in all the series. That means, I mean, India produces 200, 300, 400 duplex, everything. So that means because all these series and the grades have got different metallurgical elements present. So I will just give you a small idea that from 200 to 400 to 300, the domestic percentage in producing the grade ranges from about 85%, around 85% in case of 200, 400 domestic, and about 40 to 45% domestic in case of 300 series. So that means the dependence on the import contents in case of 300 would be around 50-55%, and in case of 200, 400 would be about 15 to 20%. So that is one statement. So now, while procuring, the impact of Forex is related with this quantum, this proportion being used as the imported component. But in India, apart from being domestic competition available, the primary competition is coming from the world, which in 1819 was about 19% import intensity in case of stainless steel flat products in India, as compared to 7% in case of steel in India. So that's the difference. And this intensity has gone up to 30%. So if there is a rupee devaluation, while up to a percentage, the raw material becomes expensive, but there is some impact on the imported competition goods also. So this is how the things work. And it gets sort of recovered through the sales mechanism also. So this is the situation.
Right. My next question is to Mr. Mathur. The other panelists can feel free to come in after him. We have been seeing a degrowth in stainless steel production in the European Union, Japan, Korea, United States of America, and majority share of it has been taken by China. How aggressive are the Indian stainless steel makers to take that 300 series stainless steel market in Europe and America?
Well, if you look at stainless steel production worldwide, very quickly for the last 20 years. In the year 2000, there was no name of China anywhere. Just 20 years back, I'm telling you, India was producing 1 million ton. China was producing even less than 1 million ton. And at that time, the ratio was 75% of stainless steel was produced in what we call the Western world. In Asia, which included Japan, Korea, India, and Taiwan, was having only a 25% market share. But today in 2020, it is just other way around. The Western world, and including United States, Brazil, all that is down to 25%. It's all China all the way from 1 million to 26 million ton is a big story, as far as rather 29 million ton last year. And India has grown, of course, at a steady rate of 8 to 9% in these last 20 years. But China is the one which has made all the difference as far as the volumes are concerned. But now is the opportunity for us, in spite of all these difficulty, when our Prime Minister spoke earlier this week, he talked of a package of 20 lakh crore, which is 10% of our GDP. I think it is handsome if it is properly utilized, properly channelized, and our Finance Minister has been giving everyday details of what is what for whom. And also he very emphatically mentioned about Atmanirbhar Bharat, independent India, with 5 pillars of economy, infrastructure, systems, demography, and demand. So I think if these are the basic parameters which the government at the highest level is thinking, we have to plug ourselves in the whole process, and the entire possibility of India producing more and going back to the healthy 8 to 10% is very much feasible in the coming year.
Yes, Mr. Bhatia.
I'd just like to add that stainless steel industry has a big export presence. In fact, in the long products and also in a lot of downstream products, stainless steel is a major exporter to advanced markets like Europe and all that. And some time back when the China was down, and we were looking at whether we can replace the Chinese quota in the European Union for stainless steel, we found that 2 of the items that we are the major exports, that the bar and rods and the CR coils, the Chinese didn't have a quota. They were covered under the others category. So we are a major exporter there, even larger than China to some extent. We have a big presence already in export, but we have to increase it more. And I think some of the measures that we talk about competitiveness will help us to even export more to advanced markets like Europe, etc.
I will also like to add here what the gentleman has said. You see, Mr. Trump was too bold all across safeguard, sumoto sort of thing, this duty, Section 232, but Europeans, they created the quota. Indian manufacturers have been very, very mature and responsible while fulfilling the quota. There was no desperation, and Indian manufacturers, including Jindal, my company, we have been able to maintain the relationship and to be present in a country without disturbing that country, and specifically not disturbing the ecosystem, and trying to behave in a way in which the buyers of those countries are used to. So that is the reason our products are being very, very well established, and even to the extent that despite of the heavy duty in US, to some typical specific applications, we are able to sell. And as long as there is a fair evaluation of a country and supplier specific performance in any country, we feel that many of Indian exporters will be treated very, very fairly in all these countries.
Right, sir. In the same vein, in the long run, Indian stainless steel producers will be competing with its Chinese and now also Indonesian counterparts. On which cost parameters typically stainless steel producers are working upon to compete? Yes, Mr. Sharma, you could take that first.
Yeah, we talked about many things already related with this. Competitiveness, outside the gate, India as a whole, and all those things. When we export to Europe, for any company which is 8 to 10,000 kilometers away from a customer, it gets discounted. So when we export to Europe, we get discounted over the local manufacturers. Similarly, when outsiders export to India, they get discounted over the local manufacturers here. That means us. But we get less discounted in Europe as compared to the premium we get in India. It means we are doing something different other than the 304 crisis, which has become a thing. Those different things are value additions, services, behavior, transparency, consistency, operational efficiencies, and creating the trust. So, competing with the subsidies and incentives given by government in our Southeast Asian countries, nobody in the world can compete them. For that, the level playing field is required for sure, which every government is recognizing. Otherwise, the government economy, the vision of 3 to 5 in 5 years versus 2 to 3 again in 5 years can never be achieved, specifically in the context of this temporary derailment because of COVID-19. So it is for the government to ensure for creation the level playing field, and that is the reason that they have embarked upon a journey of allocating 100 lakh crore rupiah for the national infra projects, and a lot of within that was allocated for the waterways, inland waterways. So I'm sure in a couple of years with this investment, there is going to be overall increase in the competitive, and every manufacturer, because the cost of capital and the logistics is applicable for every product which is being made in India, which is being exported. So every manufacturer in India is going to be a beneficiary of this advantage which government of India is going to create for the entry, for the country. So this is my view on this.
No, but this is a very recent development. What were the other things or cost parameters that were being worked upon before this government announcement?
Yeah, you see, change in the product mix. We have been doing a lot of things in various series, in various grades. We have been into the developmental activities. India is a coastal country with 7,500 kilometers of coast area. India is recognizing the importance of life cycle cost. India is also recognizing that there is a grade which is application specific. No need for oversubscribing a grade for application. That is the reason that India was pioneer in commercializing the 200 series in the world, though finally China took over it. So there is a lot of value addition specific to the customer needs, specific to the application, which Indian producers are doing. And that is the reason we have been able to maintain our volumes.
That's to my next question then. It is the fastest growing, but India's per capita stainless steel consumption is only 2.5 kgs against the world average of 6 kgs. What measures are being adopted to boost consumption? I know you all have touched on various aspects where you see consumption increasing, but Mr. Mathur, if you could just elaborate on it a little more.
Yeah, I mean, if you break down the end use of stainless steel in India and compare with the world, household, our housewife, as I mentioned earlier, are our single largest buyer without much promotion. Of course, our MSME sector are bringing innovative products, and that accounts for more than around 55% of the stainless steel. And I'm sure, as I mentioned, because of our 65% population, young population, this demand will continue. The next, of course, is the process engineering, which is oil and gas and food processing, all that, which account for around 27% in India and more than 30-35% abroad around the world, world average. That will continue in government. Most of those big projects of oil and gas and all will not die down for sure. Now comes the two other sectors which will have an impact. One is the automotive, railways and transport. Auto sector is under stress for last few months, as we all know. Production of cars, two-wheelers, bus and trucks and all that is down. I'm sure government in their wisdom will do something for revival of or survival of the auto sector. As far as the railways is concerned, the passenger coaches or the metro, I'm sure there will be a high-speed growth in those sectors which are using stainless steel. So that will be currently around 9% of our stainless steel goes into automotive, railways and transport. If there is any slippage, we have to work out that we reach back to 9 to 10% level. The other important is the architecture, building and construction, where we have just started seeing a use, because in the past we never had the right grades. We never had the quality fabricators, because success of stainless steel is selection of the right grade is the first priority for the right application. Second is the quality of fabrication, whether it's welding, finishing. So all that we are still in the learning curve, I would say, as far as the ABC sector is concerned. And worldwide, this is something amazing, 12, 15, around close to 14, 15%. So all these sectors have their own challenges. And as I also emphasized that in our colleges, IITs, in architectural colleges, engineering colleges, design institute, stainless steel should be an important part of the curriculum, and how we can introduce that from the industry support will be available. MSME is always ready. I've been talking long ago to the premier institution like National Institute of Design in Ahmedabad. They're ready to collaborate. Our friends in Ahmedabad area and in Gujarat are ready to collaborate. So I think we have just talked about it, but we have not succeeded. So these are the challenges. And I'm sure I'm not worried about 2.5 kg. We have a huge population. World average today, I was calculating, is now around 6.5 kgs. And therefore, it's a positive sign as we grow. And it will be a teamwork. It cannot be only the producers, primary producers or re-rollers or MSME. It has to be a complete teamwork, including government policies to succeed. And I'm sure when we are giving a challenge of made in India, it's not only make in India. We should prioritize and buy what is made in India if it is available, rather than looking to import for some gains. And again, he is emphasized on we have to be more vocal about local products. So I think in sum total, I'm always positive. I never think that we are on the not a growth path. Let's hope for the best in coming years.
Yes, Mr. Shah.
I will add to what Mr. Mathur said. Stainless steel consumption can be considered in private space as well as public domain. That means, also Mr. Mathur touched upon, there is a very, very distinct role of private and government and together. And why I say that? In private space, things are clear to us. Mr. Mathur elaborated it, like auto, difficult few months, but yes, BS6, commercial vehicles, it will come back, railways happening, and so on and so forth. You see, if I try to compare some macroeconomic parameters of India as a country at the global level, India is second in population, fifth in the economy, GDP, and 142nd in GDP per capita. This 142nd means $2,200 per person एक साल के अंदर जो 1.5 लाख रुपया होता है एवरेज जीडीपी पर कैपिटा हमारे देश की. The next one higher than us is 4 times higher than us, that is China, and others we don't talk about them. They are at 40,000, 50,000, things like that. So that is indicative of the sort of buying power. Second important factor is industrialization is in India is about 25% of the GDP component, and 25% of labor force is working in that portion to give that GDP. If I compare it with China, 40% industrial production supporting GDP with 29% of the labor. It indicates something about the automation level. So India has a challenge. So despite of that, this 2.5 is a good indicator because of the large population. It is just reached 2.5. It was about 2 about a year back. So journey is speeding up, and there are certain realization, whether in the private sector or in the government sector, where by design stainless becomes an integral part and a metal of choice. What we did not see in the last so many years, but looking into the efforts by the government, looking into, I strongly feel that upstream and primary producers are interacting more, but a lot of more things needs to be done. And to expedite this per capita consumption, there are certain activities which industry needs to do together. Some of them are operational efficiencies through IR 4.0, stainless steel awareness creation, business development and ecosystem, and skill development. Jindal Stainless is contributing to induct the courses in architectural and engineering colleges. We are imparting fabricator training to roadside fabricators and also to the organized sector and all. And we are also partnering with National Skill Development Corporation to impart the stainless steel welding so that more and more people are able to use and speak about stainless. We need to work together with the government where it is effective partnership, industry associations, institutes and things like that, LCC sustainability solutions, PPP investments and MSME focus, R&D focus, and also to upgrade product standards and BIS to include stainless steel in that. And of course, government is doing its own bit through investments, capital, policies, and of course, inter-ministerial coordination. With all these activities, which are, many of them are very recent developments, I think for stainless steel, despite of COVID, things will be much better. Things will be much better.
Yes, Mr.
I think the point has been well covered by my fellow panelists. I'll just like to share my experience about promoting stainless steel. When I started doing it initially, the first barrier which came is that it is perceived to be a high cost material, and wherever you go and you promote stainless steel, they say, oh, it's too expensive. So gradually we were able to educate the policymakers that it's not the initial cost, it should be basis on the life cycle cost should be the basis of any analysis of public projects. And it has been included in the government policies as a mandatory requirement, not as a optional requirement, not yet as a mandatory requirement. So the moment you apply the life cycle cost concepts, that wrong perception of high cost goes away completely. Secondly, we realize that the infrastructure that we are building today requires a lot of maintenance. A railway has a huge backlog of repairs of their bridges, and they are not able to do it. So after some unfortunate incidents which happened, we were able to tell the railways that this is the way to go forward, is to have stainless steel structures and bridges, and fit and forget type of situation you will get. And therefore, when you talk to the policymakers with right data and right information, I think they have already taken cognizance of this, and we feel that the stainless steel consumption in the infrastructure sector will also go up in future.
Right. So how could stainless steel market applications be widened and diversified, for example, in urban infrastructure and architecture, just to boost overall consumption in years to come? Mr. Mathur, and you wanted to add something as well.
Yeah, I just wanted to emphasize one important point of stainless steel manufacturing process. It is one of the most friendly in the sense that how much scrap is recycled. Now, if you go to Dubai and look at Burj Khalifa, the world's tallest building, do we know that the stainless steel supplier, what he supplied had 60% of recycled stainless steel was melted, and a fresh material was made. So when we are talking of global issues, stainless steel stands out as one of the friendly material, the way it is produced. We don't have to dig up from the Mother Earth most of the things. So it is not the iron ore or any of those things which are required. It is the scrap, ferroalloys, and the scrap is generated because it's got a long life cycle. Therefore, whatever you are using, scrap generated in your plant, scrap generated at the construction site or a fabrication site, or scrap coming from a demolition after 30, 40, 50 years use in a project. So therefore, this factor of stainless steel being a user-friendly process in today's context, as we can see in this, when we have a lockdown around the world, look at our skies. You are seeing in WhatsApp that from Jalandhar you are able to see Himalayas. How is that happening? So everybody is contributing to the environment, and therefore these factors will also be very, very important going forward. Your other question is about use of stainless steel in particularly architecture, building and construction. Now, my belief is that the large user would be institutional building where ownership doesn't change, whether it is a hospital, whether it's an airport, or any of those large buildings anywhere in the world would use for so that fit and forget. Look at the airports around the world, right from roofing. If you go to Kuala Lumpur, you may not realize. You walk through the airport, you will never realize that the roof, when it was built, was all stainless. It need not be bright and shining. So this is just one example. So in India, as we know, we are still young in producing stainless steel, has a only history of 40 years or so, and therefore architecture, building, construction is the now, since even it's not a part of the curriculum. As an architect or as a designer, you don't even know what are the inherent properties of stainless steel. Things are changing, and people are realizing, and I'm sure where we say we have around 6-7% or whatever it is in the ABC sector, world average is close to 15%. That's a area which will definitely happen going forward.
Right. One last question from my side before we take questions from the audience. What steps are being taken to boost stainless steel usage in coastal areas? What has been Jindal Stainless's role in this regard?
Things are moving in the right direction. Life cycle cost concept is being understood by the government. The infra related with the transportation and the bridges and all, it was of British era. Bridges are more than 100-year-old. They need change. Government has recognized that they need sustainable solutions. Sustainability has been one of the mottos of the government. So stainless is getting acceptance and also being realized that from the life perspective, it is not costly, what Mr. Pahuja also said. So in the coastal areas, whether it is the road transport, bus body building, or it is related with the bridges, footover, ROB, things like that. And also, who would have thought the innovativeness of the government to convert the coaches into the hospitals? So, and a lot of railway lines are on the coastal areas. There are certain marine fishery related products that are getting converted into stainless steel, like fishing trawlers, because marine industry is also a very, very upcoming industry. And once the China vacates some spaces for the world, marine industry in India will also get the opportunity, which indirectly means that stainless steel gets into the marine also. So by the COVID and otherwise also, and the policy and our initiative, which includes the training part, which includes the fabrication part, which includes the awareness part among the stakeholders in the private sector as well as the public sector. There will be lots of visible applications, including high-rise buildings, sir. I've been told in South, somebody has used 316L, more than 250 tons, in cladding a high-rise building. So all these things are going to become very, very visible, and we are partner in all these initiatives. And one more, we are working very strongly with the BIS to include stainless steel. We have identified about 90 standards, which have got related with process industry, food industry, where we are trying to upgrade the standards by inclusion of stainless steel in that. That will give another boost for the consumption.
I'll just add a point about stainless steel rebars, which is absolutely suitable for coastal areas. ISTA was instrumental in making this Indian standard for stainless steel rebars about 2 years back. And since then, we have been promoting it, and we have received good response from the policymakers. So that is another area which can give, a longer life and maintenance-free life to these structures in the coastal region.
Right. Mr. Mathur, if you would also like to add something.
No, I think let's move forward. Yes.
All right. So let's just take some questions from the audience then. The first question I'm taking is from Mr. Abhishek Rathi. He says, looking at the current pandemic situation and Europe being one of prime markets for stainless steel producers in India, how is this going to benefit us when the policy is to do away with sourcing from China?
I just referred to a word, space created by China. General sort of a euphoria is that as if everything is coming to India by default. I have a word of caution here. This is a big opportunity available to Indians. Why Indians first? Because our natural behavior, the way we behave with the customers. But are we really ready? I had been in certain such webinars where I realized that the process, the technology, the skill set, which is available in China, is it really comparable, which is available in India? Partly yes, partly no. I have understood by talking to people that in organized sector, in corporate sector, whether it is a process orientation or automation level, we are reasonably prepared, but we have to do still something more. But in case of downstream MSME, the smaller, there which are primarily labor intensive today, that's why perhaps the downstream labor intensive units seems to be more competitive as compared to the upstream capital intensive units, because labor is still in many areas cheaper. So there is a requirement of adopting IR 4.0 solutions, adopting the analytics, because the agility to that extent is required, how quickly we are able to adjust to the changing environment. If we are able to do that, then definitely yes, the space getting created by China should come to us instead of going to countries like Bangladesh and Vietnam. So it is an opportunity, and I feel Indian manufacturers will get geared up very quickly. Yeah.
Yes. I'm looking for another relevant question here.
We can also choose.
Yeah. There's another question. This is from an anonymous attendee. He says the strong focus on self-reliance reeks of protectionism, and from outside of India suggests that India will struggle to be competitive. In carbon steels, India is becoming more competitive by way of contrast. How can India overcome this in order to be a more effective exporter?
Yeah, shall I take that?
Yes, please.
We never talked about protectionism. I think in all our statements, we talked about level playing field. And what are the disadvantages that we face vis-a-vis those manufacturers abroad? We very categorically listed and informed to the government while seeking relief on certain areas. So we are not talking of protectionism. I think the Prime Minister, the government has also clarified that Atmanirbhar does not mean closing your markets completely. It's to become self-reliant and become competitive. And to that extent, we only require a level playing field.
Right, sir. Next question is from Mr. Manohar Patidar. I think he's an analyst. He asks, what will be the growth of stainless steel in the first quarter of FY 2021, and what will be the next quarter scenario?
Let me start, then Mr. Paujay can add. You see, 1 month means straight away mathematically 8% gone. So 2 months have already gone, and then the ramp up period. And I personally feel to admit that it is an uncertain time is not a weakness. In fact, it's very, very challenging time. Today, despite of that we have started our factories last week, the labor challenges, settling down, the markets, consumption centers in the red zone. But I feel that if the social distancing and other norms are being followed, in maybe 2-3 months time, the things will become more closer to normal. The capacities lost will never be recovered, but the opportunities which we discussed, and if the manufacturers and other people in the ecosystem are agile enough, I think that we can come back to the same level of growth in the year end. but the average definitely mathematically will be much less.
Yeah, I agree with Mr. Sharma ji. It's really not possible to give a number at this stage. Maybe we have to wait for another 2 to 3 months for any trends to emerge.
Right. Next question is from Ms. Bhumika Arora. She asks, what is the future scope for stainless steel requirement in electronic vehicles? The growth was supposed to increase, but with today's Economic Times article, it seems the opposite. Mr. Sharma here.
Okay. There is a global trend happening for sure. You cannot deny it towards the e-vehicles. But there is an ecosystem required for any such product to be successful. And even globally also, the ecosystem is struggling. And that ecosystem means availability of all the things around that product to make it a success. So in the short to mid-term, I don't foresee any very major challenge for stainless steel usage in auto segment, to the extent that today we are going for BS6, which will bring in commercial vehicles into the stainless steel regime of exhaust, which today in Europe is about 70 to 80 kgs per unit as compared to 8 to 10 in a car and 3 to 5 in a two-wheeler. So a big opportunity coming into it. I will come to e-vehicles later. Second is, because of BS6, there is going to be shift of automotive grades to the higher grades in stainless steel only. So this is a different opportunity for the value-added products to come into India. In case of e-vehicles, I feel that government is going to find some alternate resources, because for certain type of batteries for which the dependence still remains on a country like China, it needs to be relooked. That is point number one. Point number two, if the exhaust gets replaced by E, there are other opportunities in an automobile related with the strength to weight ratio, related with the aesthetics, related with things like battery box and nickel cadmium batteries, things like that. It's an evolving subject. So today I will not like to get worried.
Direct the next question towards you. This is from Tejasvi Bhargava. He says, hi, this is Tejasvi Bhargava representing Quality Group. Would like to have the honorable panelists' thoughts on the new sunrise sectors for value-added stainless steel applications in the post-COVID India.
Well, as we know that the stainless steel was invented, or its birth happened in 1912. So we are more than 108 years in the stainless steel business worldwide. As far as India is concerned, it has a short history of hardly 40 years. So we have to learn from the experience of people like South Africa, for example. They have all the chrome in the world. So their whole focus was to develop chrome grade steels and other, it depends on what was available. But we have a complete details of what happened and the evolution of stainless steel applications in different parts of the world. And that can't be straight away implemented in India, but we have to pick out from those areas. And of course, our household utensil will remain the top end. There's no doubt about it. Government can come out with some interesting program of just not only distributing ration and, giving atta and other things to the people in rural area. Why not the industry, the MSME, come out with a kit that this is what they need in the kitchen? And it could come through many different programs, whether it is MP, Member of Parliament fund in his district, or some other means, so that we can equip those people who are still cooking on some old methods. And also there are developments where stainless steel the cooking range, something which can replace burning of the wood and charcoal and all that. There are some developments happening in the way the cooking can be done. So therefore, there are many things which are possible. And since our biggest sector is household, so if we emphasize even a small growth there gives us volume business, definitely automotive, railways, transport will be there. Government has also announced a policy that any tender of below up to 200 crore, there will be no international participation. There are many such things are happening. And architecture, building, construction is something where we all have to put our heads together. It can't be done by individual company or a development association. We have to involve the design fraternity, people who are interior designers, who are architects. We have to work with large hospital chains, and they have to expand their business because hospital business is never going to go down in a country like ours. So existing hospital can be upgraded with a lot of stainless steel applications. The new hospital, the new airports, upgradation of railway station. There are many of these areas we have to put our heads together and select few there for each year. What I learned from Germans when I went there about 30 years ago, that for 1 year, the entire development association had focus of one single type of growth, rather than trying to do 10 things at a time. So if we take a call that the year 2020 or 2021, our focus will be on A area, we go after it, succeed, instead of doing 10 things together. So that's all. We have to put our heads together, the primary producers, the development associations, our MSME sectors, the designers. We have to have that kind of interaction and take some decisions after that kind of meeting.
Right.
Adding to what Madhur Saab, you said, taking the clue from what government is trying to do, the self-reliance theme leading to creating India as a manufacturing hub. I think there are two priorities should be and challenge for the government. One is how to make India a competitive country, which we talked a lot. Second is how to make India a safe country, because density of the population of India is again second in the world. So we have to ensure that till the time the proper vaccine is available, how do we ensure that our population is safe? Coupled with the space which gets created because of today's China positioning among the world buyers. The opportunity in India, the added focus is going to be infra and logistics infra from the competitiveness point of view. And also from the population safety point of view, I think the medical infra, hospitals, medical equipment, maybe public transportation, and some situational, which has got nothing to do with COVID that way, BS6, automobile, and the areas where China has been exporting the products worldwide. Auto components, India is quite capable of making auto components technologically, where stainless goes into it. Possibly supplies to white goods. So these are the areas, opportunities, which I personally feel will get the more focus in immediate Indian economic activity.
Right. Next question is also to you, Mr. Sharma. Ms. Sunanda Sengupta has specifically addressed this question to you. She says, good afternoon. How does stainless steel industry plan to counter the immediate challenge of availability of workforce as they plan to ramp up production post lockdown 4.0?
I was talking to my downstream industry in MSME area, the learnings where we should be ready. I said that agility, analytic, IR 4.0, in situ labor is going to be the norm. I think so. Again, this statement is in relation till the time the cure is not there. Till the time the cure is not there. So we will have to have arranged to ensure that labor is in situ at the right place. Otherwise, we know the way government is very tough on creating the red zones and things like that. God forbid, if something happens in a recently opened factory, it will be red zone again, containment area. So we have to be careful.
Right. Our next question is from Raj Jain, who's from Vivid Steel. So Mr. Pahuja he asks, is India able to meet the demand of stainless steel products if we rely on Make in India and not import finished goods from China and any other country? Globally, Indian price is very high.
Whether Indian price is high or Chinese price is low is a relative matter. And of course, Indian price is high because of the several disadvantages that we have that we talked about earlier in this presentation. But India can meet all the requirement. But you take steel industry anywhere in the world, including the carbon steel industry. Some grades will get imported, which are either not economical to make or producers don't want to make. So small quantities here and there will continue to get imported. What we were talking about Chinese import is the bulk import of the commodity grade steel. We are not talking here about niche imports which might take place for some specialized requirements. So as far as those commodity grade steels are imported either from China or Indonesia, they are very much within the capability of Indian industry. So leave aside small amount of specialized grades, everything can be imported. Even though specialized grades can be made, it is sometimes a commercial decision of the company to make or not to make. That's a different matter.
I would like to add, I would have some big appreciation for a particular segment in India. This is the kitchenware segment. This segment is about between 35 to 40% of the total stainless steel consumption in India. They are exporting close to 15% of their turnover worldwide, and that to advanced countries. And they have been able to control the import only to about 1% of their turnover. I'm talking about the finished goods in terms of the value. That means Indian manufacturers, despite of such odds of subsidies and support given by certain countries to their manufacturers, still able to manage. And of course, there are companies like ours. We are exporting about 15 to 20% of our total production to countries like Europe and America. So yes, commercial is an issue, but whether it is quality, whether it is behavior, whether it is consistency, all these things matter as a package. But level playing field is still required.
Right. Our next question is from Mr. Sumant Banerjee. He asks, how realistic is it for India to attract investments from companies that may be looking to relocate from China and not veer towards other low-cost production bases like Vietnam, Philippines, Thailand, or Indonesia?
I think we come back again to the same point of, doing ease of business and providing a level playing field and, investor-friendly environment. I think government is already seized of the matter, and we read in the press that certain actions are already being taken. And as you know, it is said that never waste a good crisis. I think we will not waste this crisis and maybe get some positives out of it by attracting investment to India as compared to our competing countries in the neighborhood.
That's right.
I'll just take in 2-3 more questions and then we wrap it up, sir.
Please.
How are you seeing the stainless steel prices in China rising to the highest in the last 1 year? This is from Mr. Rajit Maitra.
I think associations will not like to comment on this. You see, this particular rise, it could be related with certain changes in the demand-supply pattern because being a majority, being a commodity, it is price elastic and dependent heavily on demand-supply. There are certain aberrations which happen because of non-fundamental based movements in the cost indices of important metals like elements like nickel and chromium and graphite electrode, which doesn't get related at all कि कहीं पे strike हो गई है, production बढ़ गई है, overbuying हो गई है. It doesn't get related with that. So it is just some speculation, some investment or somebody somewhere. So generally speaking, I feel that if the hedge fund promoters are able to control their aspirations, that would be better. And I personally feel that nobody would be in a position to speculate about the nickel behavior. If somebody is there in the forum, I think he would be owning a Bahamas island. So nobody knows about that. Let's be honest.
Our second last question is from Mr. Girish Sangvi. He's from Nandeshwar Steel. He asks, we have observed that most of the stainless steel raw material manufacturers are under stress. What would be the scenario after COVID and how will they survive? If anyone from the panel can answer.
No, it's a very, very valid question, because in the last 1.5 hours, we have not discussed about the generic problems which exist in a business related with cash flows, related with inventory, and which have become more acute, specifically in the context that nobody knows which portion of the downstream industry will open at what pace and when. So it's a very, very difficult question, and money is stuck up. How do we increase the velocity of the cash? We do not know. It's a very, very big challenge. The only take on this, it's my individual take. How do we ensure that we don't block more money in inventories? How do we ensure that our sale is very hygienic? We don't tend to get further stacking up our money in the market. We have to be careful about that. For this, I am actually a TOC fan. So more you standardize on the product in this crisis area, better and faster will be the movement. So this is my personal take. I hope people don't get stuck up in these cash flow related challenges more than what they were at the stage earlier.
Right. Due to paucity of time, we'll have to wrap up this session. So I'd like to thank all of you panelists, all the 3 panelists, for your valuable insights. Thank you also to the participants for joining us in this very important discussion, where we focused on issues at stake for the Indian stainless steel industry, present challenges and the growth opportunities that lie ahead. If any of our panelists want to make any final comments, please. Yes.
No, I just wanted to say, opportunity for SS, of course, yes. More opportunity for Indian SS, more yes. But yes, Indian manufacturers need a level playing field. I feel that it's a matter of concern for a couple of months. After that, we will be back. But we have to fight against it together. We as professionals and me representing Jindal Stainless, we as a company, we are all available to the forum, and we know each other so well. Let's find the solutions together. Thank you. Namaskar. Jai Hind.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Steel Mint, for bringing us together. My dear friend Vijay and Karan, I'm seeing them after a long time. At least Karan, I have not seen him live in this kind of webinar. So thanks a lot for your efforts, and stay blessed. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Absolutely our pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you, Steel Mint, for this wonderful discussion.
Bye for now. We'll be back again tomorrow for another webinar. Until then, take care. Thank you all the panelists. Thank you, sir.